Basic instinct. When trouble shows up, almost every creature on this planet's got two default settings: fight or flee. And both have their merits. Fight can be seen as bravery and could lead to a glorious victory. Problem solved. Flee, some call that being chicken. Others might call it a transcendent bass player. Me, I call it living to fight another day with better prep time. Which is why, if I'm ever cornered in a battle, the last thing you'll ever catch me doing is charging. When you think about all those different toy lines in the 80s, there's one thing they all had in common. They needed a hook to reel the kiddies in, a unique selling point, a gimmick, something to separate said toy from all the other lines fighting for that sweet, sweet moolah in your parents' wallet. And credit where credit's due, Transformers probably knew this better than most. They didn't just rest on their laurels with the whole more than meets the eye robots in disguise shtick of Wave 1. Every year brought more gimmicks stacked on top of the last. Multiple alt modes, triple changers, six changers. Little dudes combining into one big dude. Huge, ginormous city bots. Dinos, bugs, and whatever this was. And for the most part, these gimmicks actually delivered. They didn't just keep the line fresh, they kept it fun. But here's the thing, not every gimmick worked, even the ones that sounded on paper like pure genius. Take automatic transformation. Sounds like the most obvious slam dunk in the world, right? No fiddly instructions, no lost pieces, no frustrated 6-year-old who can't figure out where that frickin' arm goes. Just pull it back, let it go, and watch it transform right in front of you and charge straight into battle. How much more mind-blowing can it get than that? I'm pretty sure the boys at Hasbro were patting themselves on the back, chest bumping, fist pumping in the air the moment they came up with the concept of the Battlechargers. That being said, we all know how that grand idea went, or in the case of Runamuck and Runabout, didn't. Released in 1986, right as Hasbro and Takara were running dry on repurposed Diaclone and Microchange molds, the Battlechangers were part of the first wave of Transformers built from the ground up, specifically for the Western toy line, not borrowed or localized. They were designed by Takara's Hideaki Yoke, a guy who, according to more than a few senior Hasbro designers, had more fingerprints on this franchise's engineering than almost anyone else in its history. Quite the pedigree. That said, even Michael Jordan shot an airball every now and then. So it's understandable that not every design out of Yoke's playbook was a winner. Runamuck and Runabout were built around one mechanical cheap trick: a pull-back friction motor. And here's how it worked. You pull their car modes backwards, winding up the internal motor, let go, and watch it charge into battle. After a set distance, a trigger catch releases, and the whole thing violently springs upright into robot mode while it's still rolling. Sounds pretty cool, right? Robot mode powered entirely by physics, no hands required. Except, here's the catch. To make that spring-loaded transformation actually work, something had to be sacrificed. And in the case of the Battlechargers, that something was basically all of it. The hood became a single-fused foot block, the doors flip up on spring hinges to kinda sorta resemble arms, and the back end just swings down to reveal the head. Pretty straightforward, except all of that added up to one thing: zero, and I mean 0 points of articulation in robot mode. The only interactive element you got was clipping a gun onto the shoulder, because functional arms and hands evidently were a luxury that these two couldn't afford. And look, I get why this seemed like a good idea, but when your entire toy line's central pitch is transforming robots, a toy that transforms into what is essentially a moving target rolling directly towards the enemy is kinda missing the point a little. You're basically stuck with a one-trick pony. Maybe cool the first 3 times, but by pull back number 4, the only thought most likely crossing your mind is putting that toy back on the shelf. With that being said, the Battlechargers weren't the only auto-transforming duo in the line. The Autobots had their own spring-loaded pair introduced a year prior, Topspin and Twin Twist. Same idea. Pull back, let her rip, watch them jump into robot mode, feet firmly on the ground, ready to start something. That is, if they didn't do a faceplant first. But at least those dudes actually looked like robots. Squat, blocky powerhouses with just enough arm articulation to hold a weapon and point it at the enemy. Runamuck and Runabout had none of that, and while I'm sure they've got their fans, as far as I'm concerned, clearly the inferior toys. If this was meant to be a 2-on-2 rivalry between similarly gimmick duos, as far as the toy goes, it wasn't even close. But here's the twist. Despite arguably having the suckier toys, Runamuck and Runabout scored one major win over Topspin and Twin Twist. They actually showed up in the original Sunbow cartoon, in the US Marvel Comics, while the Jumpstarters got nada. Nothing's ever been confirmed, but the popular theory floating around the fandom is that it mostly boiled down to alt modes. The Jumpstarters never got Earth modes, and if half of your franchise's tagline is robots in disguise, that puts a couple of bots who turn into a space-aged hovercraft and a drill tank at a pretty serious disadvantage, don't you think? So yeah, as far as the cartoon and comics were concerned, no Earth mode was pretty much a death sentence. The Battlechargers had no such problem. They got very earthly modes, and it doesn't get any more basic than a car. Runamuck rolled around as a classic off-white Pontiac Firebird Trans Am, full American muscle car swagger. Runabout, meanwhile, was a sleek black Lotus Turbo Esprit, slick European sports car flavor. At face value, 2 similar-looking alt modes, but 2 completely different vibes. One's more moonshine, runner, backroad outlaw energy, and the other's tuxedo and gadgets turn your car into a submarine cool. A contrast that you'd think would serve as a springboard for writer Bob Budiansky to build 2 distinct personalities for the Battlechargers. Maybe Runamuck as an uncouth, rough-around-the-edges bruiser, and Runabout as a cold, sophisticated, aristocratic snob. Give it a whole odd couple dynamic. And if that's what you thought, well, you'd be wrong. Unfortunately, the Battlechargers' uniqueness ended with their alt modes. As far as personalities went, Budiansky elected to go with, well, dumb and dumber. No ambitions, no technical geniuses here, just a pair of your basic by-the-book thugs. One, a maniac who enjoys recklessly barreling down highways, sowing discord and panic in unfortunate drivers around him. The road is my playpen. Cars are my toys. And the other, an uber-destructive bot who just enjoys blowing things up for the sake of making things go boom. A pretty car makes an even prettier wreck. That said, Budiansky did manage to throw in a few nuances to their cookie-cutter characters. For Runamuck, it was his softer side, his utter fascination with junkyards, which he could just stop and stare at for hours, like he was admiring a painting in an art museum. A quirky obsession that Runabout attributes to one quick change too many, snapping some cerebral circuits. A diagnosis that might make you think that he's the more mentally stable of the two. But again, you'd be mistaken. Ever heard of the expression, dying of boredom? Well, Runabout believes running out of things to blow up would literally be fatal to him, which says a lot about his own mental state. So yeah, 2 destructive, rather simpleton loose cannons. Enough that fans started calling Runamuck and Runabout the Decepticon Beavis and Butthead. And pretty apt, too, even though they predate the MTV duo by roughly 6 years. Budiansky basically wrote the archetype before MTV even greenlit it. Anyway, the 2 boneheaded thugs were in full harmony in their official debut in the Transformers Marvel comic, where Runamuck and Runabout didn't just make an appearance, they headlined their own story arc, and even landed the cover. How's that for a flex? In issue 23, titled Decepticon Graffiti, Megatron, in true evil leader fashion, decides he wants to challenge Optimus Prime to a duel to the death. And instead of just, radioing him directly like Soundwave suggests, he summons the Battlechargers all the way from Cybertron to deliver the message in person. Because, there were new toys that needed promoting. Anyway, while Runamuck and Runabout zoom off to carry out Megatron's orders, it doesn't take long for their rebellious, juvenile snickering, retroactively cementing their Beavis and Butthead personalities to get the better of them. They ditch Megatron's orders entirely to look for something more entertaining. And in their search for fun, they spot a bratty little kid on a family road trip scrawling, "Vacations are the pits" on a wall. And, immediately inspired, decide to follow the family across America, spray painting Cybertronian graffiti on every major monument they pass. Mount Rushmore, the Gateway Arch, the Washington Monument, they all get tagged. Unfortunately for them, in true womp-womp fashion, nobody on Earth can read a word of Cybertronian. So all their dastardly, offensively, well-thought-out messaging goes completely unappreciated. Once they do figure this out, they switch to English for one final message, spelled out across a freshly restored Statue of Liberty. Humans are wimps. Oh, the horror. Naturally, all this Decepticon shenanigans don't go unnoticed, and so the 80s glam rock band best known for hits like Way Cool Jr. and Round, set off to stop them. Just kidding. The Humans' Rapid Anti-Robot Assault Team, RAT for short, led by the enhanced human circuit breaker who, I'm sure, made every little boy like me tingly inside, not with her electrically charged powers, mind you, if you know what I mean, set off to stop the Battlechargers. And while Runamuck and Runabout win round 1 against Circuit Breaker, she comes back for round 2, this time piloting a makeshift Gestalt built out of captured Autobots. And this time, she scores the knockout, reducing both Battlechargers to smoldering heaps crashing into the New York harbor. All of this in a single issue, but enough to tell you everything you needed to know about this rather chaotic duo, because they wouldn't really do anything consequential for the rest of the series run, only to show up near the end doing the other thing they'd eventually become best known for: dying in rather unflattering ways. Both Battlechargers are present on Cybertron as part of a larger group assembled by Primus to make a final stand against Unicron. A final stand, Runamuck doesn't survive as his wrecked Trans Am is seen amongst the ruins. Too bad there's no one left around to admire his scrap heap corpse. Surprisingly, Runabout survives, and while you'd think, after living through something that catastrophic, he'd want to turn over a new leaf and embrace life, he's instead seen strolling through the ruins of Cybertron the very next day, looking for something new to destroy. Which makes it fitting, I guess, that his second chance gets cut abruptly short when he's attacked, pulled underground, and devoured by a Cybertronian demon. Anyway, as mentioned earlier, Runamuck and Runabout also make a few appearances in the Sunbow cartoon post-86 movie in the show's 3rd season. It's not much, but like I said, still better than no appearances. Am I right, Top Spin and Twin Twist? In the episode Chaos, Runamuck is seen acting like a boss, using the Decepticon Blastoff as his personal flying steed, while firing down on Cup and Company with his newly acquired Death Crystal shooter. He's later joined by Runabout in the episode Ghost in the Machine, pulling guard duty on Tripticon, and immediately proving utterly useless at their job, getting easily outmatched by Scourge and the literal ghost of Starscream. I mean, to be fair, when you're up against a ghost, what would you expect them to do? Starscream possesses Runabout's body, shoots Runamuck with it, and then runs Runabout headfirst into a wall for good measure. Not exactly a highlight reel, but hey, at least they showed up, yeah? And speaking of showing up, if you're enjoying this video and would like to see more stories from Cybertron keep showing up on your personal feed, the solution is simple. Just keep watching. After this, go ahead and watch another one, and another, and another. If the almighty algorithm sees you digging my stuff, it'll just give you more. That's really how it works. So just keep watching, or pick a playlist and let it keep playing in the background as you go about your day. That being said, any way you choose to help me out is greatly appreciated, so thank you. Now, the Battlecharger's next appearance would come years later in the early 2000s revival by Dreamwave Productions. And while that revival was short-lived itself, both Runamuck and Runabout managed to show up and, well, actually do something, most notably working for Shockwave as assassins. And guess what? They actually managed to assassinate someone. Well, Runabout does, blasting a hole straight through the chest of the Autobot Triple Changer Sandstorm as the poor guy tries to lead Optimus Prime and company to safety. For his trouble though, he ends up getting severely gnawed on by the Sharkticon Gnaw. Surprisingly though, he survives. After Shockwave's defeat, both he and Runamuck are seen trying to repair themselves in one of the one-eyed Decepticons' abandoned laboratories. Unfortunately for them, they accidentally unleash the Electrum-enhanced Starscream clone, Sunstorm, who takes out both of them pretty convincingly with his sunny personality and burning hands, and yet they both still survive. In what state? Well, that's not elaborated on, but considering they're not exactly in the shape to answer any questions for the Autobots regarding what happened to them, I'd imagine it ain't good. And while they manage to surprisingly stay alive, the Dreamwave era of Transformers doesn't, apparently ending in 2004 due to reasons. Which brings us straight to the next and arguably one of the most significant chapters to date in the Transformers franchise, bar none. The sprawling 13-year story told in the pages of the IDW comics. A run that Runamuck and Runabout actually played a major part in ushering in. How major, you may ask? Oh, I don't know. How about them being the very first Decepticons, nay, Transformers, to ever reveal themselves on Earth? How's that for a claim to fame? And I mean, given what we already know about these two, it seems just about right that they'd be the first to break protocol. Wait, proto what? Okay, let's get into this. See, unlike the widely accepted origin story of the Transformers crashing on Earth and reactivating millions of years later to continue the war, when IDW took over the Transformers license, they went the slow burn approach. Not just thrusting readers right into the middle of an Autobot Decepticon throwdown. Right from the get-go, they didn't give us a Decepticon faction that just attacked planets willy-nilly and overpowered them. IDW's Decepticons took a more measured, calculated approach, carrying out their conquests in carefully planned phases. Beginning with Phase 1, Infiltration. A small unit of Decepticons arrives on a planet with the sole purpose of gathering intelligence. No contact, no reveal. Just quietly lurking in the background, learning all they can about the planet's inhabitants. At this stage, you wouldn't even know Decepticons were on the planet. You know, the whole robots in disguise thing again. And little by little, phase by phase, secret bases of operations get built, world governments are destabilized, and hotspots are agitated, basically getting the natives to obliterate themselves without any direct Decepticon involvement. And finally, when the time is right, the grand reveal, the invasion. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Back to Phase 1, where Runamuck and Runabout are part of the Earth infiltration team led by Starscream alongside Thundercracker, Skywarp, Blitzwing, and Astrotrain. Now, at first it might seem odd that a couple of third stringers at best like the Battlechargers would be part of a team stacked with heavy hitters like the Seekers and Triple Changers. But if you think about it, it makes sense. This is an infiltration team meant to blend in undetected with human society. And I don't know about you, but when was the last time you saw a fighter jet or a tank or a choo-choo train just casually parked outside your window or driving alongside you on the highway? So, despite their boorish, low-brow personalities, Runamuck and Runabout's rather mundane alt modes made them the ideal members of an infiltration team. Again, on paper anyway. In their first documented mission of the series, the Battlechargers are deployed to hunt down a human agent who discovered the Decepticons' hidden base and taken photographic evidence of Starscream in mid-transformation. Definitely not his most flattering side. And while they managed to track down and terminate the agent, his device actually was stolen prior by a young girl named Verity, who, along with her companion Hunter, is rescued by a mysterious ambulance doing its best Kyle Reese impression of "Come with me if you want to live." So the chase is afoot, and it ultimately leads to Runamuck and Runabout, rather on brand with their characters, impulsively breaking protocol and transforming right in front of the humans. A major screw up on their part, because it sets off the first domino in a chain that eventually gets both of them killed. See, exposing their cover forces Starscream's cell into full-blown siege mode, way earlier than the infiltration protocol allows. Megatron shows up personally to discipline them for it, but by that point he's just done playing the long game on Earth altogether and goes full-on F it mode. Fast forwarding straight to Phase 6, Devastation, which entails summoning the uber-powerful Decepticon 6-Shot, his designated Phase 6 specialist, to Earth for one sole mission: hunt down the Autobots and end it. No subtlety required. Except 6-Shot doesn't travel alone. He's followed by a bunch of equally powerful extra-dimensional zealots called the Reapers, who, despite what the Blue Oyster Cult might tell you, should absolutely be feared. Because this group has made it their mission to erase entire worlds from the board just to remove anything worth fighting a war over. In quite the genocidal recruitment drive, wherever 6-Shot goes, the Reapers follow, hoping he'll finally join their cause, which doesn't bode well for Earth. They follow him there, take one look, and decide that the whole planet, Decepticons included, needs to go. Cue a full-scale assault on the Decepticon command bunker, and in a chaotic fight between monsters and titans, it's predictably the little grunts who don't get to walk away, or in this case, run away. Runabout gets electrocuted until he basically explodes, and Runamuck gets decapitated, which doesn't outright kill him, but leaves his poor noggin helpless and exposed to get crushed under a boulder. So, yeah, both Battlechargers very much dead, signaling the end of their story in the main IDW narrative, and, so far, all she wrote for both Runamuck and Runabout. Which brings us to the legacy of the Battlechargers in the grander scheme of the Transformers universe. And while I'd love to paint the picture of a couple of toys born out of a single gimmick that pretty much was a flop, rising from the ashes of failure to become one of the franchise's most iconic duos, I can't. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. Every decent fictional universe definitely needs its traditional archetypes. The noble leader, the power-hungry tyrant, the old fart, the underdog, the traitor, and so on, to tell its story. But that being said, why can't there be room for a couple of just basic regular Joe Schmoes too? Because Runamuck and Runabout and the characters Bob Budiansky cooked up for them were never given grand arcs, redemption stories, or master plans. No secret ambitions, no hidden depth waiting to be unlocked. Not everyone needs to be driven by some grand cause, fighting for the freedom of all sentient beings or achieving peace through tyranny, just to move a story along. Sometimes a couple of dudes just want to drive fast, roughhouse, dick around, and spray graffiti on a wall, or a US national monument. And in one throwaway moment of pure thoughtless recklessness can still manage to set off a chain of events that kicks an entire 13-year-long IDW saga into high gear. In the end, not every villain needs a tragic backstory or a hidden agenda or some deep-seated rage fueling them. Sometimes they can just be simple-minded, thuggish a-holes who happen to really like blowing things up, and somehow still manage to change the shape of the story anyway, purely by accident. And viewed in that light, I think it makes Runamuck and Runabout more palatable, or dare I say, likable, precisely because they're relatable. Even if, yeah, their toys still suck balls. And with that, let's talk toys. 1986, the originals, the ones that started it all. Runamuck, off-white Trans Am, gold sticker trim, black friction rifle. Runabout, glossy Black Lotus Turbo Esprit, red accents, red particle beam rifle. And again, despite being designed by Takara designer Hideaki Yoke, neither figure ever got a Japanese retail release, skipped entirely for the domestic market. I mean, can you blame them? 2005 Cybertron Universe Runamuck, No, that's not a mistake. This one was originally built as a direct homage to G1 Runabout, hence the black deco. But because Hasbro had lost the Runabout trademark by this point, it had to be released under the name Runamuck instead. And you thought you already had trouble telling who was who. Well, here's a tip when the confusion sets in. Runabout with a B is the black one. 2012 Transformers Collectors Club. The first real attempt at giving these two a modern update. And more importantly, articulation. Fun Publications repurposed the Classics Generations wheeljack mold with new heads sculpted by Dan Cana, blending both characters' visor designs for a proper Runamuck, the free membership incentive, and a Runabout, who still couldn't legally be called Runabout, so they ran with Overrun instead. 2015 RID or Transformers Adventure by Takara, Japan's legend scale take, built off the Combiner Wars Blackjack mold. Runabout hit general retail, while Runamuck was locked behind a Hero X mail-away exclusive 2-pack with Dogfight. 2020 War for Cybertron Earthrise, the real deal. No longer a repaint or a retool, a brand new mold designed from the ground up, with faithful G1 silhouettes and actual articulation. That said, in an age of unlicensed alt modes and cost-cutting whenever possible, the Battlechargers no longer transformed into their distinct Trans Am and Lotus Esprit cars, but into a sort of vague amalgamation of a car that leaned a little more towards the Esprit side. Runamuck was a Hasbro Pulse fan vote winner, released at standard retail, while Runabout, who at the very least got a new retooled head, was a different story, released as a Target exclusive that vanished from shelves almost instantly during peak pandemic supply chain chaos, sending aftermarket prices soaring and leaving many collectors one Battlecharger short for years. Or if you were desperate, you could grab a retooled version of the same mold, repurposed as a generic ground soldier for the Transformers Devastation game's 10th anniversary Studio Series release in 2025, and paint it black. Anyway, in a bit of irony, Hasbro kind of telegraphed this unfortunate separation on our shelves through the official write-up promoting Runamuck's release. On a mission to infiltrate the Autobots ship the Ark, Runamuck and his brother Runabout were separated. Runabout was left behind while Runamuck hid in the Ark's cargo hold. And apparently he could only speak in half sentences without Runabout there to finish them for him. Aww. Anyway, at the end of the day, splitting up an inseparable duo across a standard release and a scalped exclusive is, frankly, a little cruel. I was lucky enough to pay a little extra for Runabout before he became ridiculously expensive. Thankfully, just this year, Hasbro finally announced reissues of both, so completing the pair in your collection will no longer require selling a kidney. Which finally brings us to third party, where the pickings are slim, but basically all you really need, if you ask me. For all you Legends collectors out there, Iron Factory's EX26R Racing Bros Retrograde will scratch that itch. Essentially retools of their Racing Bros Sunstreaker mold, but at this size, as farmer Arthur Hoggett once said, that'll do, pig. That'll do. Finally, for the larger masterpiece scaled crowd, X-Transbots was the only company who dared to give us some high-end Battlechargers in MX-28 Fast and MX-29 Fury, die-cast accented, screen-accurate takes on the Sunbow aesthetic. Not the best, not the worst, just serviceable if you ask me. And in the name of maximizing their design spend, you get multiple decos, Toon accurate, toy accurate, and apparently Iron Man accurate. Yeah, I have no idea what that one's all about. Or this one. But if you really want your Battlechargers with that golden deluxe feel, have at it. And speaking of deluxe, are you familiar with the pair of Transformers marketed by Hasbro as more premium than your standard run-of-the-mill Autobot? I'm talking about the deluxe vehicles, Roadbuster and Whirl. If you want their story and the answer as to why they disappeared, I've got that over here. Or if you want my latest story, I've got that over here. Either way, thanks for watching and I hope to hear from you in the comments below. Go ahead and tell me your story.